ready up there? Y'all good?
Yes, sir.
Good down there. Y'all ready?
Yep.
All right. Like to call the board of supervisor meeting to order. Let's all start as always with the pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. We do have an agenda. Anything we need to add to the agenda this afternoon?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody have anything they want to add?
No, sir.
We'll go with it.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Jonathan, y'all want to make some comments first before we go to Tina and Anna? Or
Yeah, I think maybe just some opening remarks. So where we're at in the budget process for today, we're going to cover school operations, school capital, the revenue estimates, because it's good to have that. There may be some revenue, certain questions or insight that the schools can give you while they're here as well. And then we will follow up with county operation and county capital, whichever order you want. Last week, the Board of Supervisors had requested that staff, I know you said me, but it's a team here, to go through the budget, do any revisions, and add the 7% on the COLA for the county side. So those changes have been made. Thank you for bearing with us. Mostly everything was loaded yesterday. The operational side, we just had to do some fine tuning. So Jennifer has that ready today. So we have made those adjustments. We have a summary sheet, but if you want to get into any detail level, we can do that. The two departments that I'm tracking that you asked for us to bring back for more thorough questions was EMS and the Sheriff's Department, but we're ready to answer any department requests when we get to that point. So that's all I have. Ms. Warren, is there anything you have before we?
I think you covered it. Thank you.
all right, Anna, Tina, now let them talk to us. Yes, ma'am. You can go either way.
You want to hold the mic and sit down, or you want to stand up?
Do that too. There you
Yeah.
go.
And you've got those little things right there that you pull up, like you're in grade school.
Can you hear me? Okay, so it's probably that we start with our summary sheet. Is that what's coming up? And we were thinking today, and whatever you guys prefer, sometimes we read line by line, but the summary sheet reflects all those little memos on the side, so we thought it would be easier just to cut to the chase about the bottom line numbers. Okay, so you can see it up there. So our budget is built, because as you know, the General Assembly is nowhere near at this point passing a final budget. So we built our budget on closer to the House's budget because it was the most conservative budget. The Senate budget actually was like what, $500 and some $1,000 in our favor, which would be great if that was shaved off right there. But we know that's not really going to happen all the way through. We'll be very grateful if we do get some more of that. So the House budget actually was about, I think, like $100 less than the governor's budget, in the end of it all. It's $100,000 less. So this is built off of a little bit of the governor's budget and then mostly the House budget. So the first thing is the 7% raise, which the House and Senate did agree on. That's $5,504 coming from state funding, which would mean that's where you see the $394,505. That would be our request from the county in order to provide the 7% raise to all of our employees. Do you want me to nicely pause between lines if you have any questions? Okay. Health and card question.
Well, I guess right off the bat, the $1,132,933 does not correspond to the summary here, but I mean it's not that far off. So
we'll get to that later.
Right, it's just
Okay.
give or take a few. So we didn't change our estimate for the 10% for health insurance on this sheet because we were guesstimating 10% and health insurance came in at 9.9%. That is if we cover the full 10% for our employees for the health insurance. Just stop me if you want to talk about anything. For prep services, these are services that were part of a regional program for our special education children. So there is an increase in those services. When you think about these services, that's our, like, if you ever hear people talk about like adaptive PE, assistive technology, occupational therapy, it's those services where we as a county wouldn't be able to afford to have a employee or two, but instead we join with other surrounding counties and we're able to provide these services to our students. So that has increased by 50,000. We would like to continue on with an after school program for our students. We did write the ESSER 2 set aside grant, and that has funded Mad Explorers for the past 2 years. So, and that was a $600,000 grant. This $100,000 would just provide after school tutoring and things like that to our students. It wouldn't be the full blown Mad Explorers program that's ending. That grant is ending. We are finding a need to increase our summer school funding. Budgeted is usually about 75,000, but it's running us like this summer we're estimating 120 some thousand just to meet all the needs of everything for the students still catching up from COVID. An increase in coaching salaries, $500 per coach per season. It has been a long time. I don't even remember the number of years since coaches got it. 15 or so years since coaches received a raise. It's a long time coming. Substitute pay increase, we'd like to go from $12 to $14 an hour. We would like to fund, we have that SSO position right now at the middle school as part of a grant. We would like to continue that, applying for that grant. Our portion, however, would be $23,120. And then I'm sure, as everyone knows, utilities and gas and diesel and fuel are all increasing. So those are our estimates to cover those lines for next year. So that's everything from the sidelines in our budget. That's the overview. And we will take questions, comments.
Anybody have questions they want to start with? Carter, what do you want to do? You want to work on your sheet?
Yeah, let's see here. Okay, so that's all the increase. I think, yeah, I think we need to put some things in perspective real quick. I want you all to look at this.
Here,
Huh?
need one of these back.
Huh.
Give it back real quick.
Probably not.
Thank you.
I made a bunch.
Yes. Hey, yo, mic's on. All right. There you go. Excellent.
Okay, so Clay and I attended the school board workshop this past Saturday, and I spoke at the end. So Tina and Anna, you guys have heard my spiel already, but I'll say it again because that's what I like to do, say stuff again. So with this sheet I just passed out, let's go line by line real quick. So the school CIP request, which we haven't gotten to yet, is $735,572. The school operating budget as presented increased 1099129 for a total of $1,834,701. Anybody stop me if
Well,
Right.
let me ask this.
Uh-huh.
Is it worth Tina and Anna going through the CIP before we go through this? I apologize.
so. Is the CIP going to change any that you all know of? Okay.
Y'all have any, okay, y'all have any comments on CIP before we start going into this? Yes. All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
So my numbers will hold.
Yes, sir.
So if you do that, the next line says increase in tax rate based on $175,000 per hundred. So every penny that the county goes up on people's taxes is worth $175,000. So given that, that $1,834,701 will result in 10.5 cents per hundred on people's taxes. The current rate per $100 is 74 cents per hundred. The new rate would be 84.5 cents per hundred, which is a 14.17% increase. Now, to put that in perspective, which Mr. Jackson likes to do, and I agree. So if you use a $300,000 home, which I'd say is probably a median price, the current annual taxes on a $300,000 property is $2,220. The tax increase would be $314.52 for a total of $2,534.52. Taxes on a monthly basis. Y'all find that the second to the last line, $211.21. Now, if your mortgage is paid for and your insurance and all that stuff is paid for, well, your insurance you're gonna have to keep paying. But if your mortgage is paid, you got a bill of $211.21 every month. That's real money. Additional taxes per month, $26.21. Which so just as a starting point, I just want to lay this out so that if everybody agrees that this is it, that's what the taxpayers are faced with. Okay. So,
Yes, I think so.
all right. So now, I went through some of this stuff. So at the top of the page, there's that same $1,834,701 that we were talking about. So starting down the page, employees absorb 80% of the health insurance increases. That would reduce this number by $224,166.40. Now, I mean, you guys have already heard this from me before, but I'll say it again, is I have never in my professional career seen an employer pick up 100% of an increase in health insurance. All right, so this is what I'm laying out. So the after school program, there's the $100,000. I took that out because you see my justification to the right, whether it's right or wrong or indifferent or whether we all decide anything different. This is just me. Previously funded by COVID funds. I think that's a correct statement. And the increase in summer school program, I took that out. That was also previously funded by COVID funds. The SSO position, I took that out because we already have SROs. Now, Tina and Anna, when I get finished, you guys can correct any misstatements I have here. Coaches' salaries increase, $27,000. I just said not needed. All of us, I mean, I've done my share of coaching. I didn't care. Okay, the skinny budget add back. This past Saturday, the General Assembly passed the skinny budget, and in it, the way I read it, the $240,000 that I think I got from you, Ms. Graham, was what we were looking at. Will be coming back to us for FY24. And off to the right of that, I said, okay, and if it doesn't, I say we take it out now. If it doesn't, we'll do a supplemental later if this does not happen. The anticipated increase in state funding. the difference between the state Senate budget and the House budget, I put 350,000 in there. You said a little while ago was probably 500, but I put 350 in there. And once again, I think with the governor's emphasis on education while he was running his campaign, and since he's been in there, I feel confident that we will get that money. And again, if it doesn't come through, then we'll do a supplemental later if it doesn't happen. The CIP, the only adjustment I saw on that was the alt ed structural amount of 20 grand. So the total adjustments come up to $1,034,000. So the revised ask would be 800,000 for 1460, which is still 4.6 cents per hundred.
But then also we've granted what supplementals. We've got the 171 that we gave back just the other night that goes into capital, and y'all have what was 800K on top of that left over for capital improvement.
Correct, about
There you go.
810,000. And if you go to that other
Yeah.
CFP slide, we're
We'd
hoping
already-
that can be used to do the makeup your air units at Waverly because they're quite expensive. So can we touch on health insurance for a moment? Because I mean, I agree, it is a lot to pass on. But since we share health insurance with the county, that's where we have some concerns because there's such a discrepancy in what the school board employees pay versus what the county employees pay for health insurance. Like if you just look at the single 500 plan, the county employee pays 55% less than the school employee for that plan. On the family plan for the Key Advantage 500, the school board employee pays 24% more than the county. You can see our family plan, that first plan, that's $890 a month our employees are paying if they need to cover health insurance for their family. And you're talking about some people that aren't bringing home too much more than that. So that definitely is a concern for us. And if you go on down, even to like the Key Advantage 1000, our single employee pays 78% more than the county employee for that plan. They pay 30% more for the family plan. For the HSA plan, the high deductible plan, we're both equal with the employees. For you all, we both pay zero. But then for the dual, our employees pay 70% more, and our family plan, the employee pays 64% more on the school board side. So I think if that's not a conversation this year, it's a conversation we need to have. If we're going to be on the same plan, it shouldn't be that much of a difference between what we're paying, what our employees pay.
Didn't we adjust our side? Was it last year? Or, yeah, we adjusted our side. Y'all were better than us previous to that for multiple.
We haven't gone down. We
Yeah,
stay the
understood,
same.
understood. But yeah, I think that's where I agree that there needs to be some parallel between the two. But it has been out of bounds for a while, and if we can work on that, try to figure it out, I'm fine with that. But I mean, just
It's just when you
Picking
see
up
our
both
rates,
sides.
to add 10% is a lot for our employees to add 10% onto those that's a monthly payment that you see.
And Mr. Chairman, the handout I provided you all today, there's 3 pages. It's the summary where we began. The health insurance plan you see on the screen, referenced by the superintendent. And then the last page is the county plan, kind of the comparison that Ms. Graham was referring to. What I would add to that, and I don't know if we have that in our form, but what we are working off of for the Board of Supervisors direction last week was include 7%, but picking up 0 on the county side. So I don't know what that, I guess that would be that rate, that third page. If we, do you have this sheet updated?
the third page.
Yeah, third page.
Okay.
But I went through and once again, you know, you guys might correct me on some of my numbers, but I'm looking at instruction under function 1000, and the fringe benefits are 40.97% of labor, right? Under administration, attendance and health, it's 44.9%. And I got to believe that, that percent of fringe has got to have a lot to do with health insurance, and that percent, I don't know that I've ever seen that.
Our VRS is right at 20%. The not counting, well, if you add in the retiree health insurance credit and the group life insurance, just for teachers, the retirement portion only is 16.62.
Teachers,
Right,
16.2
16.62.
is VRS.
Right, and another VRS benefit is the retiree health insurance credit, which I think is 1.34.
Yeah.
And then the group life insurance is 1.21.
Yeah, that's about right.
So you have those there.
But the bottom line is that when you've got a total compensation package that takes your dollar and multiplies it by 1.4025, 1.4097, that ain't bad. And it I just don't see how anybody could argue that they should not participate in an increase coming to the county or the school system or to the taxpayer.
Right, and we're taxpayers too. So,
Right.
but right now we're
Sure.
representing the schools, so we certainly understand, and we all pay taxes here. The I would say I can agree with your comments, passing some on, but it's just the disparity right now between the county and the schools is a hard sell to our people. If we pass on our 10%, or if the school board picks up the 10% for our family contribution, we would be paying $1,444. And you guys right now are already paying $1,446. So, we've tried to keep our health insurance, like you like to say the phrase, the skin in the game. And we ask our folks to put skin in the game, and just the difference between the county and the school board makes it hard to do that right now, to not pick up the 10% and get them more in line, and then going forward, split the increases.
Well, I don't know. I don't. They're two different employers. When I was working in Virginia Beach and come up here and take another employer, they're all different. I appreciate your comment that they need to be more. I really don't. Help me out.
Well, the other problem with that was that they were different for a while, but always came back to us and said we're on the same plan. And there was a lot of flack from all employees because we do share the same health insurance plan,
Okay.
and we're all part of the same county, and we all pay the same taxes. So that was the argument on the side of the,
Mm-hmm.
because we paid a little bit more for family, and than the county did at one time, and then there was an adjustment made. I can't remember what year, but there was an adjustment made, I think, for that purpose.
I see.
And the other time and I've worked for the federal government also, and with other state governments, they've picked up health insurance increases before. And when the 30% came down the pike,
How much did we pick up with that?
30,
Yeah, that's exactly. But that's, I know, but we
Right.
have picked up multiple
Right.
times.
right.
But
And like I say, I understand passing on. It's just the problem between the county and the school right now is the,
with the 7% increase, and let's just say that they picked up the 80% on the health insurance. It doesn't cut into their take-home pay. Employees will still see an increase in take-home pay.
I ran,
know,
It
I got
depends
that
if
one.
I did a spreadsheet on that,
Go ahead.
but I was using the worst case. I was using the, family plan. And, so picking up for them picking up 80% of it, it looks like anybody that made $32,000 or less, and if they were taking the family plan, would see less in their paycheck. I was just trying to find a break even, like who would get hurt. I don't know how many people take the family plans. Probably not many. Didn't y'all? I thought you gave us that.
I didn't bring it.
Yeah.
What other comments do we have to the schools on their budget? Anybody else have comments?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a few. And first of all, I want to thank Supervisor Yao for doing the extra analytical work on this. It's been very helpful. A couple of general comments on the county budget period. We're looking at these. If this request were fulfilled, we're looking at a 10 cent per 100 adjustment just on this. And we've already raised taxes this year because we didn't fully equalize our personal property rates when we had to make that adjustment this summer. So we've had a significant tax increase in the county already this year. We are looking at a budget situation for all of our other departments where we have instructed them to streamline their requests and operations for this upcoming 24 budget year. And as far as I'm concerned, the schools are not going to be any exception here. We're in an unsustainable trajectory of spending in this county. And if it continues at the rate that it is, and there's upward pressure due to inflation, another year or two we'll be paying $1.00 on our real estate taxes. That's just not going to work. We have got to make some adjustments. And I'm looking through the budget. I have looked through the school board's requested budget, and it's very difficult for me to really get a good picture of what operations are going on. And some of this data is aggregated to the point where I couldn't make a good analytical decision as far as spending goes. Particularly when we're talking about administration, it's aggregate numbers. I'd like to see a breakdown of that on a per person basis and what their actual roles are. And I know that there might be an argument out there that the Board of Supervisors, that's beyond the scope of their authority to look into the school's operations in that detail. But you have to realize, we all realize that when we're looking at these budget requests, they're not asking the Board of Supervisors, they're asking the Madison County taxpayers. And taxpayers in this county, I know, support education, they support law enforcement and everything else that we do. But we have to face the reality of how much money that we have and how much we can spend. And we're going to have to tighten our belts everywhere we can. So that's the general comments I have on the budget. I need to look at it more. And again, I'd like some disaggregation of some of these budget figures so that I can really make a better analysis on it. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have comments, questions on schools?
I got a couple more.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so we sit here year after year as a board and hear comparisons of Madison to other counties. All the time. Well, this with just about every department. So let's do that. Let's do that with their school system, and I would expect an answer from this. But our school system has substantially less kids than Culpeper, Greene, Albemarle, Louisa, all that stuff. Okay, so And then when I look through here, and I look at the uh, average school administrators, which you all told me was principals and assistant principals. You got 10 of them for $1,041,000. That's 104,161 on the average. Yeah, median would probably be the better number, but I don't have that. So 104, 161 average for principals and assistant principals. Teachers average 61,333. So I'm assuming there's a bunch of them that have been here for a long time, and that's a good thing. Um, Administrators, 2.2 of them, average 87,000. And then the administration side, function 2,000 administrators, two of them, average 139,983. So look at all these $100,000 numbers I'm throwing out here. The county may have three people that are over 95,000. And I have checked with Culpeper. I know of a principal at Yale Elementary School over there. She's got 800 kids. She's got one assistant principal. She currently makes 96,000. Is getting ready to get a 7% raise, so she will be making, I don't know, whatever that is, 10% of it, whatever. She'll be just over 100,000. That's Culpeper with 800 kids. And I'm looking at these numbers, and then I went through and I did another analysis, which I'd have to show. Tina would probably have to confirm my stuff, but the administration to direct cost ratio, the administrators, and then in the direct side, I put teachers, paraprofessionals, substitutes, nurses, mechanics, bus drivers, 31.46%. At Head Start, we're limited to 15% admin. And in my prior career in defense contracting, if you went over 8 or 9, you were out of business. So perhaps I've got the wrong numbers, some of the wrong numbers here, but I've got 57.2 FTEs in administration, and I've got 220 FTEs that I labeled as direct. So, this whole combination of stuff, not only the average salaries that I was seeing, but the indirect as a percent of direct, it leaves me no alternative but to believe that we're not top heavy and something can't be done. So
So go back
tell
to
me
your
where I'm wrong.
indirect versus direct as
Yeah.
far as so you don't think like elementary principal and assistant principal are direct? Is that how you're?
I
reading
have
that when
them
it
in
comes
here
to
as indirect.
as far as the students' education and what they
Yeah.
do. That's what you're saying.
Right.
But they're meeting. They're holding meetings all day long. They're working with families. They're working with the students.
Yeah.
And the 10 for our school administrators is because we do have 2 for each school, as you said. And then we have an administrator that's over all ed and supports the high school in other ways. Next year, we'll be adding CTE to that job responsibility. And then our athletic director is part of that as well.
It's part of the principals and assistant
Right, as an
principals.
administrator, yes. They have to
Okay.
have a license in this county for that. We do require that.
Right. Okay, so I did another analysis too. Sorry. So I went back. I've got all the budgets from 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24. And for years to come, we're going to have to yank out, uh, especially 2023, because it's just crazy. Back in 2020, I was using 1,648 students as enrollment. Is that close?
I would think so.
Okay. Using 1,648 students back in 2020, it was costing us, all costs divided by 1,648, it's $12,800. Of course, in 2023, with the influx of pandemic money. It was 15,449. So I went back to 2022. I took 2022, which was a budget of 21,484,844. I tacked on 5% from last year, which took it from 21,484,844 to 22,559,086. I put 5% on everything, no, not just labor. I just took the whole budget, put 5% on it. Then I took that budget, rolled it over to and put 7% on it for this year, and I'm at 24,138. 24,138, and we've got 25,5. So I don't know, maybe I did something wrong again, but that's $1,400,000 below what it feels like it ought to be, which is not far from what I came up with the other way. So I can get, I can let y'all see all my calculations, but does that sound
Yes.
reasonable?
Yes.
No. Tell me to go back to school, Annie.
All right.
I just have one comment, excuse me, Clay.
Please. Yeah. Please.
There's about, I'm just going down the lines, 1.1 million in this is ESSER funding that's going away after FY '24. So the budget is gonna come down, but if you take out the ESSER funding of about 1.1,
Yeah.
the budget comes down to 25.4. But of course, we don't want to turn down ESSER funding. They give it
No.
to us and we want to spend it to help the kids. So, getting money and the budget being more because it's somebody else's money, not county taxpayer money, is a good thing. And if our budget was 30 million because we had 5 million more ESSER dollars, that would be good too.
But that ESSER funding is not doing anything to help us with the ask from the county. So what's that ESSER funding's going for? I think you sent it to us, but I don't remember. What is that going for this year?
Yes.
FY24?
Right now, we rolled over some positions into that. We had some written into ESSER 3, but we rolled a few of the ESSER 2 positions over that we're still working with kids. So that's 6 positions that are rolled over or that were already part of ESSER 3. And then we had written the companion grant, the extra money that you could ask for, the competitive grant, so that we could cover the school board roof and doing the fitness facility for the kids. So that would be the match from that grant is coming out of ESSER 3. That's pretty much spending that the rest of the way down. I don't think anything.
Yeah, and that was a done deal before you started on your budget process here.
The one that was very good. The one that strikes.
Just trying to understand.
Nah, I think everybody. The one that's playing with me is and I'm almost to be very specific. Public information officer, we see no value. We've all gotten a great chuckle out of this person. I don't see him at the meetings. Nobody's met him. I see that as one position, along with the SSO on the basis of the SROs being in place. It's just not needed. Going at the comment about the balance between the health insurance from the county and the schools, I'd be willing to play and to talk about a higher percentage being proposed on the health insurance, but that other positions just a wash from it. I see zero value in it. And I mean, we heard the comments at the end of the school board meeting on Saturday, and the school board's all referring any kind of comments to any kind of media to the public information officer. That's fine. That's what they want to do. At this level, I don't see any value in that at this point. Um, parties numbers, I think parties numbers, I think it's sort of the right direction to go, especially with the tremendous amount of capital that we need to do this year for health and education. But that position, I just see, I'm sorry, I just see that one as a loser. I just don't see it. Um, and the SSO, I think, is the same way. The SRO program, which we all value in every way, just trying to build a better relationship between young people and law enforcement. I think everybody, I talked to you before when that was not a popular thing, and the comment that Anna said was, no, we all see value in the SROs. And I think everybody is in agreement on that. I think the number the parties come up with is right. How y'all want to go about doing it. That's up to y'all. That makes sense at all.
I think the difficult thing when it's finally our turn to come talk to you all is one thing we can all agree on is we want the kids to be taken care of in the county. So it is always a very difficult conversation. It's hard when you start nickel and diming the party. You know, we could sit and talk and I could tell you everything the administrators do to make them worth their while and how long they've been there and why they get paid how they pay. But we all know that it's because they're doing good work. Like Madison is a really good place to be. It's a really good place to raise kids. I know. I brought kids here. They're doing great. So
Well, so I forgot to say one other thing. And my dad reminded me of this many years ago, is when you hire somebody, and this happened to me. I went to Virginia Beach. I got hired. Of course, I was the controller of this company. And the first time I run payroll, I find out, some of my staff is making more than me. I come running home, I'm sitting at the supper table with mom and daddy up there, and I'm complaining. And dad said, "What are you complaining about?" I said, "They're making more than me." He goes, "Didn't they tell you what you were going to make when they hired you?" I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Well, then shut up." So when you hire somebody and you tell them what their salary is going to be, you tell them what their benefit package is going to be, and they sign on the dotted line, what's the problem? They agreed to that. That was acceptable to them. Not good advice from my dad.
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard arguing with somebody that passed away.
You'll never know whether that was the truth or not.
Yeah, I didn't want to say thank you, Party, for giving our presentation today.
Well, I know. Sorry, I didn't know when. Okay.
Yeah, we got there. Yeah, that's. Anybody else have comments or questions?
Did anyone have questions about the CIP budget? We didn't really hit on that, but I guess the representatives have filled in.
I mean, everybody sees the value, and I think everybody sees the value of the joint CIP process and keeping everybody there. We are all exceedingly fortunate to have Dr. Timmons with us, and it is shown how obvious it is multiple times, and the CIP continues to get better. The thing on Bureau Veritas that we all value is that having a schedule of all the different mechanical and facilities is just great. But some of those numbers are a little bit high. I'm hoping, and with the CIP, we can budget I think we budget where we're at on it just based on projections, except the LTED deal. I don't understand that at all. It makes zero sense. Why are we spending it? It's got 330 in the upcoming year as a potential, or 230, excuse me, plus the 20K just exploratory on a loading dock that we barely use. That doesn't make any sense to me. The only one that Dr. Timmons we haven't gotten an answer to yet, and it's not on him. I think he's working through it. Is on the boilers being an issue that needs to be replaced at the high school. We were paying Riddleberger, it was Riddleberger, wasn't it, to watch these, and we had catastrophic failure, which seems like somebody needs to be picking up the dollar on that if we're paying for that service there. The other one that's out there, and I guess that maybe I didn't ask the right question on it. these air handlers over here. I mean, that's 8 to 1 million for 4 air handlers. And I understand they haven't been working for the last year, and that's now we've got to address the issue. I mean, there's no other option. I mean, we've got to do this. But we need to be dealing with that. And I understand y'all keep things going as well as you can with and trying to keep the requests down and not coming to us except in budget season, sort of. So Esther and ARPA is kind of confused that, but I mean, we still have. I mean, no matter if it's 800, if it's the 800 that's already there, and then the 171, it's all county money. We're still putting in what 1.4 million dollars into capital or something. I mean, that is tremendous what that is. And the other one on the raises, and I do agree with him. It bothers me. What was the last year that we didn't do any kind of raises for teachers or any of educators in general? Because and this goes to county side too. We are always. I cannot. I really. It's been maybe the first year I was on the board. I know a couple of years before that they had some issues where it flattened out. Historically, the county, I think, takes care of staff fairly well as far as COLAs, and we did bonuses for sheriff's deputies. That came from the state, and a lot of this is passed through. But historically, the county does do this, and it has been a long time since we have not done an adjustment up. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, I don't understand how every year we seem to forget this, and I think the state, frankly, put us at a tremendous disadvantage at the 7%, which is a ridiculous amount to raise people. And that's only covering a portion of it. The others has to come from Madison County taxpayer direct, and it's all tax money. We all understand that. And everybody here pays them, so I mean that's what it is.
And it doesn't go away next year.
Exactly.
See, that's the thing.
This is what we're working off of. I think this is where we're at this point. Jonathan's got an administrative function or summary with Ms. Warren back here. We can talk a little bit farther as we get into revenues and go from there. I think I'm working off these numbers. I think that's where we're at. Is that not? Are we way off? There you go.
No, but Anna, you're explaining to me what is included in the principals and assistant principals, those positions. That's exactly what Mr. Jewett was referencing, is that we don't have any of that to even understand, huh? I think.
Tina and Anna are both exceedingly easy to work with in every way, and I think it is only serving the students and the citizens of Madison in every way. If we have additional questions, I'm sure they'll respond to them in any way that they can.
Let's see.
So, got anything else? It's true. And last year with the ARPA and ESSER funders, it was less money from the schools. I think that should be mentioned as well, 100%.
Yep.
And I do kind of want to mention that, and I think Clay knows for sure, but our list of requests during budget season, our process, and we get feedback from our staff, like we really talk about it a lot, with pages. So this is after lots of heartache, what we bring to you. I don't want you all to think this is our wish list. This is after lots of, not this year, don't think we can make this happen. And I can always share that if you would ever want to see that. But there's a lot of red on that sheet where I mark through it to let our staff know that this is not happening. This is what we're putting through. So I don't want you to think this is our sheet. It's been through a lot.
But both of you guys agree that this effect on tax rate sheet that I presented is undoable. right, is undoable, cannot be done. Huh? Well, let's start canvassing. Let's see. 10.5 cent raise on your tax. Huh? No? Kendall? Yes? Okay. Hey, Steph. No, I'm just kidding. All right, enough. But like I said last Saturday, if a huge PR, which maybe go up with it, is going to need to be done, if we're going to convince the taxpayers in Madison County that they're getting a return on their investment at this level. All right, I am really going to shut up. I'm not saying anymore.
Do you have a rebuttal for Carter?
I do not. Cardi knows I respect what he says.
Just ask my mama. I'm a great guy.
No, that's, if we have any more questions, we'll come to you. We know it's a long way from where you're at, but I mean, there's some stuff that just it's that capital that's just killing us. I really think that's a big component of this. I understand that we're sitting on a healthy fund balance, and we need to do some of this stuff. But I mean, it is. I mean, 10 cents is 10 cents, and we raised it a penny one year, and that was like the world was ending. You go down the path of raising it. I mean, yeah, I'm telling you. I mean, it is crazy. That's where we're at. Let's see where the budget process goes, and we see where we go from there. Y'all have comments back
You're going
here?
to do your presentation.
Just a couple of things. So one is the preference, Mr. Chairman, and the board, that I've got notes here, but just to collect all the questions and requests of information from the board, and then work with schools to get that back. Is that the prefer? Okay. And then we also have revenues, if and when you want to go to that, if there are specific questions for the schools on that revenue. I know Ms. Warren has had an earlier conversation with Ms. Crop. They're willing to speak to any of that. A lot of that, as you know, it's not directly involves the school who sets that, but that's based on a lot of state calculations and so forth. So if you'd like for them to stay for that, that's your pleasure. But we do have revenues next, which has a school component, a VPA component, and everything else on the local level.
Y'all like to stay? Or y'all are busy people. Would you like to stay, or after we stripped it all the way down? Are you ready to leave? It's either way.
Mr. Chairman, Tina gave me some notes on their revenue that I'm happy to go through if they choose not to stay.
It doesn't matter, man. Y'all I'm sure have plenty of stuff to do. We've got Miss Warren. Please. There you go. It's not symbolic or saying anything. We appreciate y'all coming. All right. Jonathan, you want to do revenues before we do county operations and county capitals?
It's your preference, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know. Obviously, revenues is what we have the 204. The other side shows you where we're currently at as far as expenditures. So your preference, Mr. Chairman.
Let's do revenues. Does that work
Okay.
for everybody? Please.
You have revenues up. And we have Ms. Murray with us as well. I want to recognize we've had several sit-down meetings between Ms. Warren and our treasurer and Commissioner of Revenue and myself, so it's led to this sheet. If it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I'll hand it over to Ms. Warren. She has highlighted kind of some key areas when you think of taxes. I know earlier was mentioned the tax rate was on the real estate. There was conversations about the increase of taxes. That's basically the valuation of vehicles, which created that. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Warren.
Thank you, Jonathan. Working with the treasurer's office and Brian Daniel. We have up on the screen, I have in the first column, AF here, this is the current fiscal year 23 approved budget. And then column AP is the draft revenues that we projected as a team going through this. And a lot of these are based on actuals and also just looking at some 4 years worth of historical data for the county. And what as Jonathan mentioned, I've highlighted in green any changes that are significantly increased in revenues between the 2 years. For example, the real property is projecting, and that's same tax rate projecting to go up 172,000. And on the personal property, same thing based on the values, up to 200,000 increase for the personal property. And the other ones that I've highlighted, I'll just scroll down slowly here. Merchant capital increase of about 45,000. The local sales tax and restaurant food tax, both increase of about 100,000 each from the previous fiscal year projections. As I scroll through, interest income based on the increase in the interest rates, we are projecting about 132,000 in additional interest income next year. Cigarette tax, about $72,000 increase in revenues on the cigarette tax, and that's based on looking at historical data and the first 7 or 8 months of this fiscal year as well.
And if we raise taxes, that's going to go up.
People are stressed.
In the shared, what we've done is done a projection of where we think the comp board funding is going to come in. And we put an escalation of 5%. We don't know what that actually is yet. So we just have a placeholder for those. And then in the grant section, no new significant grants besides, let me see, we did remove the Virginia Domestic Violence Grant based on
That's the
Assistant Commonwealth Attorney position, correct. And then this clerk LVA records grant, Lita has informed me that they are going to be receiving that grant money this year in fiscal year 23. So previously we had some monies here and we've taken that out since she is going to be using that in fiscal year 23. The big change is the ARPA funds. Fiscal year 23, we had $2.5 million in ARPA funds, and those monies were received in 2 chunks back in July of 2021 and August of 2022. And we've zeroed that out. So that is the big change in red here from the 2 fiscal years. On the opioid settlement, we have earmarked these funds to use for our drug court match in fiscal year 24, and we're projecting about 20,000. And on the LATCF federal funds, Jonathan, do you want to mention anything on those funds?
Yes, as you believe at this past week's meeting, we confirmed that Madison County was awarded the $100,000. This is tied to negative impact or counties that could have negative impact. We are a county that participates in PILT, payment in lieu of taxes. We have over 30,000 acres of Madison land that's in Shenandoah National Park. So we received the 50,000 already confirmed by our treasurer, and we anticipate that other 50 to hit in FY24. I did want to mention as well, the SRO, so far as another grant, we pulled that out of revenue. We were on our last year of the SRO grant for the resource officer for Waverly. We've been told by the sheriff's office they're going to reapply for that one, as well as apply for a grant for the recently hired SRO for Wetzel. So when you look at deductions of revenues, that's a component of it. but then you got the expenditure side. So when we get to the summary and you get to the department level, when you specifically see the sheriff's department, you see that higher number. That's because we are covering without that revenue. We hope to receive that, but I believe in not booking things that are unknown. We hope, but it's not a guarantee. So I did want to point that out as well.
That's a good point. Previously, I think we had about 107,000 for the 2 SRO positions, and we've taken that out. But that is the amount that the sheriff's department is going to be seeking. And then just scrolling down, in Fund 23 here, this is the schools. The biggest, and when I get to the bottom, I'll share the notes from the schools, and I have a summary. The bottom line on the county, the difference between the 2 fiscal years is about negative 1.6 million. I'm going to round that. However, 2.4 of that we know is the ARPA funds. So county revenues increase if we remove the ARPA funds by about 971,000. On the school side, the $1.1 million less in revenues, 400,000 of that is state funds decreasing, and ESSER funds decreasing is $600,000. And they do not have any new revenue sources. And those are the notes that Tina gave me. So 400 for state fund decrease, 600K decrease in ESSER, and no new revenue sources. So on the revenue side, this is the picture between the 2 years.
So when we get to expenditures, we're hoping to at least get to that number or below. But as you will see, we've got some work to do based on the recent discussions you had with the school board and even the revisions that I have made. You'll see here momentarily at that summary level, which when you look at our expenditures, that's county government, that's any outside agency considerations, as well as other things we have to contribute to, like our Central Virginia Regional Jail, our juvenile detention centers. We're in District 16, I think, of the court system. So there are things that are not discretionary that you have to fund that's outside of local level but has local money tied to it. So that's the revenues, Mr. Chairman. We stand ready for any questions.
On the revenues? Picture actually works in our favor pretty well, higher than anticipated previously, or worse than.
I did have one question. So go back up to the meals tax way back up. It was extra $100,000. That's significant.
Get up there.
What would that be the result of? Restaurant food taxes?
Taco place.
Huh? Food trucks? Food trucks are a big issue?
Oh, yeah.
Huh. Oh. And they're out at Sheets, or across from Sheets all the time. Okay.
Thank you.
I was going to ask Ms. Murray if she had any comments on any of this, because she helped put this together.
Right. Of course, COVID was a strange year, so we can't really base it on that. But we feel fairly confident in this projection.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll have to tell you, I asked Pig and Steak since the prices have gone up like crazy on steaks and things like that. I was in there one day and I'm like, do you see people not eating the steak or whatever? They said they really hadn't seen a change in it, that people, if they wanted it, they're getting it. And I'm like, okay. So apparently it's not hurting them as far as with their meals and whatnot. So.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Deb.
All right. Other comments on revenue?
Mr. Chairman, this is really immaterial, but I had a question for Ms. Warren. On 401-400, the mobile home fees, is that, I mean, they've disappeared. Has that been rolled into something else or?
It has. It's been rolled into personal property.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. I forgot to mention that. Thank you.
All right, other comments on revenue? Let's go to the county side, operations and CIP.
Are we going to start with the CIP first?
Let's just go the operations side.
Um, 3.2. It does.
All right, if you can go to the department version 3. And these are sorted, I believe, Jennifer, by the increases, I believe is how we did that. All right. So the two departments that the Board of Supervisors asked us to go back and review, and we met with multiple departments, so I'm not just singling out two specific departments. On the sheriff side, on the capital, we were able to remove about $65,000. That was on a request of fully funding the tasers. There's this point where I think they're looking at some newer equipment that could be available next year, that version is not this year. So maybe they'd be advantageous by deferring that, as well as next year. It's looking at the option. Do you want to pick up all 5 years, which is what that number reflected, or just pay the annual lease amount? So talking to the sheriff, and we just agreed to move that into FY25. And then you'll still have to determine annual lease payment or just pay all 5 years up front. But that resulted in a change from last year to 278,164. I did point out earlier that taking on the SROs, and all of these department requests include the 7% COLA, no increase to health insurance. So that's really the large number you're going to see when we get to the summary. I think it represents $600 and some thousand of the overall new request monies on the county side. That includes county, outside agencies, and the other regional efforts that I talked about. On EMS, you have a request of $168,889 of new monies. Of that, roughly $31,000 is of new operational type of funding. And the rest is the COLA. We did some significant trimming areas I can recall that we reduced. We flatlined the OT request to what FY23 numbers were. We're going to work on, this is still a work in process that we'll utilize through FY24, but seeing if we can bolster our part-time efforts. One of the things that we took on after the rescue squad were standby events. And we're having to cover those now, so there could be some OT tied to that. Depends on where it hits in the schedule, as well as we're going to maybe look at staffing. When I say minimum staffing, we're above what's required for a truck. So I don't want to scare the general public or the board like minimum staff, and we're not looking to increase to cause mutual aid requests. But we are going to look to do some adjustments that have some favorability. We know, or I believe, we cannot continue at that sizable OT budget year over year. So we're working on that. But the main thing is we flatline that to at least the level funded, I should say, of FY23. So of that 168, 31,000 is new operational monies, and then the remainder is COLA. Transfer station, your largest increase there is the disposal. That's where they haul our trash to another facility, and the rates that went up 50%. That's what that number reflects. Emergency Operations Center, that's 911. Majority of that is tied to staffing, the 7% COLA. We did reduce that budget, I think, down $6K from the last time we met. Facilities and maintenance, again, primarily tied to COLA. Of course, I will say, while there's no health insurance, when you up the salary, there's FICA and VRS and all those things that go with it. So even if that's a department of two, that still can be a sizable number. There were a few things in there. I think like cleaning supplies went up and so forth. We did move, for example, the cleaning supplies that was in the EMS budget, we moved that over to facilities because we should be warehousing that in one place. But overall, that's what's reflective of the increase. On the county attorney side, just for those who weren't here for the announcement on Tuesday, I'm getting mixed up because we've had so many meetings this week. Mr. Gregg has announced he's going to be retiring, so there will be an overlap. The Board of Supervisors approved Mr. Hannon Wright will be the new attorney for the county, but there's some transitional piece in there. So that's what's reflective in those numbers. And then, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions I go through, please feel free to stop me. Building official, same thing. That's just basically your salaries. Not a lot of increases there. As far as office supplies or nothing of that, it's the bulk of it is your 7%. Commissioner of Revenue, we did allow for a little bit of overlap, and this is one I want to talk to you about. So certainly you can adjust any of these, but I had good conversation with Mr. Daniel. He has one particular staff member who has said that they're going to retire by March 2024. I know that seems a long time off from today, but we're in FY24's budget, which splits calendar years. So he has asked for, I can't remember if it was 4 to 6 months, but basically I allow for a 3-month overlap. That takes a new employee's salary at $35,000 and basically carries that for 3 months, as well as assuming any insurance and FICA on that number. And that has the 7% increase to the current staffing in that office. So that represents the 28,751. And again, please stop me as I'm going through if you have any questions. On the circuit court, again, just tied to raises. And I know it's going to sound as I continue to go through here, but that's what it is. Treasurer, same thing. It's on the 7% COLA. I think postage it's minimal, but it was a small increase. So that is in that number, but most of that is fringes.
Hey, Jonathan,
Yes.
but the circuit court, look at the percent is 89.9.
Can you pull up the circuit court,
did
please?
Move something else in there?
I think this is Lita. She, I think, came earlier on. If it wasn't the 9th, it would be the 16th. Is it version 2 or her original? You're going to have to zoom in for my eyes. I can't. Oh, is this the judge
yeah.
secretary we share from Orange County? So, yeah, there's a formula. I think it's a 60-40 split. Madison is responsible for 40%. So that's salary and fringes and all. There's an MOU that we have with Orange County. So we actually have that document. I didn't know that document existed last year. So really this is catching up from last year. But it's a 60-40 split with Orange County. That's our representative of our
So
portion.
it was missing in this past year's budget.
Yeah, we paid it. It's just unbeknown to us. It was so it's there now.
Yeah, I remember.
Good catch, sir. Treasurer side, again, some postage, mainly the 7% and the impact of that. Registrar's office, there was about, I want to say, a $12,000 increase. I believe there's an additional election cycles. I know presidential, and you're going to have state, local elections, and that 45-day early voting period applies to all of those. So Ms. Eames felt it was adequate to the proper staffing that she has to have in those offices reflect overall that 12%, or 12,000, excuse me, dollar increase. And the rest would be the COLA.
The 12K, that's covering the additional election. Does that include that third person?
That's everybody she has on staff right now.
Currently, when she came and presented, she wanted one more.
I think what she was looking to do, and we can certainly ask her to come in, was bolstering the hours of one particular. I don't know if Natasha is her deputy. I feel she is, to actually give her more hours per week. So it's not adding a new person per se, it's increasing their, yes. Is there anything that you wish? Okay. All right. On the tourism side, again, this is primarily on the benefits side. There is some part-time staff there, so that's not just Tracy. It's part-time. It's economic development the same. Clerk of the Circuit Court is up again. I believe most of these are it's the 7% that you factor in. So I don't know if you want me to keep saying that going through and just hit on anything that's an additional to that.
Like that take long to say 7%.
Yeah, 7%, 7%.
That's the one.
Planning and zoning, I thought that went down. We'll have to go back and check that. I thought that number went down due to the decrease in the planning commission side. So we may want to go back and check that number, Mr. Chairman, because there was a reduction, or that could be his zoning line item. We changed some things with Tyler, so that may be his zoning, but I'm gonna make a note we go check that, because I do know the planning commission side should have went down. Victim witness, while that is a grant position, there's one employee that runs that program, so that increase would be the 7%. Board of Supervisors, we're going to need to go look at, Jennifer, because the board had made a statement that no increases there. So I'm not sure what those increases would be. All right, so we need to take that out, please. I got them to say that, not me. So I'll work that. Emergency management, that the Stop the Bleed kits, I believe, was that number. We need to check that number as well. I think that may actually be a flatline number, but we'll leave it at the 2183 increase. That would not have a salary in that line item because that person is paid out of the EMS budget. So my apology. We'll make notes as we go. That's another one we'll follow up on. Juvenile probation was a slight increase. That's due to they got rid of state cars. They've got their own per diem that they got to use their personal vehicles to ride around to these houses. And, well, that's passed along here. So small increase, but a increase. Personal property, slight increase. Board codes of appeal, slight increase. And the auditor was level funded. Land use program was level funded. Madison Combined Courts is level funded, as well as the examiner, commissioner of the counts, magistrate office supplies, confinement of prisoners. Our contingency, as you know, that's a 1% number. So we'll go back, and that number could be a target based on any adjustments. I believe that contingency policy is 1% of operation minus VPA and CSA. There's two components that you pull out, and then you calculate 1% on that total. So that number, as you adjust other items, that number would change. Right now, so we realize it's the same as last year, but we'll go back and make sure that 1% policy is there. So far this year, I think we still are $200-some thousand remaining in that 229 we have budgeted. Board of Zoning Appeals, that's a reduction of $25. Finance is a reduction of $112. That was larger, but again, there's the 7% you add back on. The good news is it's a reduction, but what you saw, I think prior weeks showed a lot more. But again, when you start adding 7%, it stacks up. Planning Commission. Okay, this does explain. So ignore my earlier comment that planning element before that 220 some $1,000 that factors in our zoning administrator, the zoning and permit technician position, as well as any of their office supplies and functions of that office. So what the lower 81,100 is your planning commission, that actually decreased about 1340 due to going down from 9 members to 7. GIS was a 7,000 reduction. LODA, that's line of duty fund payment insurance, that has gone down, and I believe that's based on who's enrolled in that program. That is a requirement that you must carry. It's usually tied to a first respond type of funding. The lease or the Fund 40, that's our debt payment. So when you see that, and it's some leased equipment, but overall where it says Series 2020A, 2020B, 2020C, that's your debt service payment. So whether that's the radio project, that's the primary school renovation, that project wrapped up, but that is your debt service, and that is our amortized payment for this year. Okay. Thank you very much. Commonwealth's attorney, there was a reduction there of $45,336. What that represents is the assistant Commonwealth attorney's position that Mr. Hamilton vacated. That was a board decision to request removal of that. We realized, I think it was $42,000 or $45,000 of that was covered by the grant. However, the remainder of that was county funded, and that was the salary portion. And then you back out all the FICA and things and insurance that were tied to that. That's where that overall reduction is. However, this does reflect the 7% increase on the remaining staff that's there. And then the one adjustment to the deputy Commonwealth attorney's salary. And we can get specific to that if you like, but all that is included in here, which still shows a reduction of 45,336. And then last, information and technology, there was a reduction of $74,622. Outside, any questions before we move to outside agencies? All right, if you'll go over to that, and I'm going to use the same screen on my side. The big one, as you know, and I have not done any adjustments on that. That's really going to come from the board. We left that at the $1,099,129. So we know that when we get to the bottom, that's the big number, right? DSS, also known as VPA, that was an increase of $214,402. CSA was an actual decrease of $350. A slight trade-off there, still running favorable. Central Virginia Jail, we actually went down. That's a good thing because that's based on 3 years of what they call bed days. So that's down roughly $25,000. Parks and Recreation, we're showing that as a $26,000 increase. Primarily, that is the salary and the fringes. I'm not sure if there was anything operational per se that may be in there, but most of it is salaries. I do not want to conflict the additional request that it will be followed up here momentarily. So those are two different things. This is just the operational side. And I believe most of it is in salaries. There's probably, what's covered in operations, if I may ask Lindsay? What's anything in your operations like electric or whatever that's in that 357? Okay, so thank you very much. Supplies, fuel, electric, and then the labor force, which reflects the 7%. Let's see, I've got off task here. Rappahannock Juvenile Detention, that was a major increase, and I spoke to that when I carried that presentation, I think 2 weeks ago. That was an increase of 115,000. If you recall, the last 2 or 3 years, you've had sizable, like 6-figure true-ups. And even though that's a juvenile side, it's a formula similar to the regional jail. So it's based on the participation and their stay. And there was at least one year we had a juvenile in there over a year. They have now moved on, but that's where those costs come at. It's a running, an average. So hopefully we are tracking below budgets to actuals now. So we hope we don't have a true up this year, but that is the increase for FY24. Health Department, a slight increase of $16,807. The CSB was a slight increase of $10,000. I know Mr. LaGraff came and spoke on that. Some of that was, I think, salary. They were trying to attract folks there. I don't know if there's anything, Mr. Dawson, that you want to add to that or not. I think most of it was the benefit side on the CSB. We do hope that they will be renovating soon the Thrift Road complex that they purchased from the county. So we'll get some services back in the county and hopefully help on some of our holdover times in the sheriff's department, but to be determined. Madison County Library, Mr. Chairman, I'll say this directly to you and the whole board. Earlier, I had cut that in half, but to stay in compliance with the state formula, I put that back at the $10,000 increase. So that's at 170,600.
I mean, we know we need to go up.
I did ask, if you may recall at the last meeting, what was the $1,000 from the town. I'm grateful that they got $1,000 from the town. This is the first year, but shouldn't they have a per capita like the county's held to a per capita standard? So I asked that question. We'll see what next year looks like. But that's our increase for this year. The volunteer rescue, the volunteer fire department, that is a slight increase of $46.93. I believe some of that's tied to the fire program. There was an increase of the fire program funding this year, which that is great. So that's grant money. So even though it's on our expenditure side, that's technically a pass through. On the Virginia Cooperative Extension, that is Mr. Jarvis. There was an increase there. I went too fast. Give me 1 second. Of $12,254. There is a match that comes through the state for that. There was an increase in there requested, one of which I think is we fund a part-time position over there. And so an increase of $12,254. I did not adjust that budget. I really didn't see anything in there, but if you want to dig back through it, we can. Skyline Cap, I left that at their funding request. That is an increase of $11.10. On the drug court MOU, I don't know if that was just a different calculation why that's up $492. But overall, the $20,000 is part of that equation. So at least we'll have a $20,000 offset for the overall expenditure of $32,565. So they have a normal request. As you may recall, Mr. Carew came and spoke last time, and then the drug court actual funding is additional 20. So that makes up the $32,565. The Culpeper Saltwater Conservation District is actually decreasing. So that is a down from last year. The Regional Commission, that is Patrick Monty. You may be more and more familiar with that face, as well as they are offering their planner assistance. That's helping Mr. Webb and the county going through our comprehensive plan. But that is level funded from last year. Central Virginia Partnership for Economic Development is flat funded or level funded from last year. No increases. The Foothill Housing Corporation, that is at $7,000. Again, we're just funding that, same as last year. Regional Transit, same thing. We've kept that the same. There is a per capita rate on that, and that was an increase, I believe, from last year. A year or two ago, we actually got caught up. There was a delta between what Culpeper and I can't remember if Fauquier County is tied into this or not. There's a network of like 3 counties, Madison being part of that. There's a real value in that. For many of you that may not know, I encourage you to learn more about that regional transit program. Germanna, that was a $54,000 request they gave us. Last year we funded them 5,000. I've cut that to 4,000. We definitely did not recommend the $54,000 request that they had. Part of that was for a career coach that would have been a position that was parked in the high school. And I do not recommend you fund that $54,000 effort. I'm recommending if you do consider fund them at $4,000. Aging Together, again, I'm not singling out any agency, so please don't make me be the bad guy, but I'll take that before you will. Last year's request or your funding level was 3,000. I did take that down 1,000 at 2. If you want to put that back up to 3, we certainly can do that. That's just where I have that program. Foothill Child Advocacy, that last year's request was at 2,600. I think they were requesting that again this year. I took that down to 2,000. All the ones remaining below, River Basin we kept the same. Safe we kept the same. Boys and Girls Club we kept at the $1,000 request. Madison Fair was a $1,000 request. I reduced that back down to 500. Excuse me, I skipped over Career Works. We left that the same. And the county fair, we reduced the request back to 500, which was the same as last year. Legal aid, unless you tell me any different, we zeroed that out. That was a $2,000 request. Piedmont Dental Clinic, you haven't funded them the prior 2 years. I believe they had a $2,000 request. And initially I was thinking maybe fund 1,000, but ultimately I just said zero that out. We're just trying to get to a responsible number overall. And this is your discretionary, mostly discretionary spending here. TGEMS, that's Thomas Jefferson EMS Council. I kind of reach out to our staff and say, hey, is there any value in that? Or are there things that we can do internally versus relying on that? And we took recommendations and just zeroed that out, provide no funding this year. And then the Madison Learning Center, this was a request, came to us FY24 for $30,000. And I put that at 0. That may be something the board want to consider or not. I'm just letting you know what my revisions were. Jennifer, does that take us to the summary? Do you want to kind of recap the summary?
The only correction on Boys and Girls Club, they did request 2,000.
Okay.
And we brought it down to 1,000. So, yeah. So overall on the outside agencies, and I'm going to go to the summaries tab.
Jennifer, could I ask
Sure.
a question real quick? So I was asking Charlotte earlier. So for the Boys and Girls Club, they use this building down here on Waverly Yale grounds. They pay nothing for maintenance. Do they pay any electric bill? Do they pay anything?
I'm going to look at our in-house expert. We're thankful we have the former unit director with us now.
So the in-kind coming from the school system in Madison County is huge. So I would.
What's the, what was that, 100K that we gave them from ARPA?
100, maybe it might have been 120, somewhere along in there. It was big. So, I mean, I was just thinking that. I mean, I would not go. I mean, I think we're doing our part already. Kim, do you feel that way?
Oh, yeah, throw her under the bus.
He's going around the room. He's talking to some other folks.
Okay. I know.
So Supervisor Yao, or can you go back? Are you saying my
Just-
recommendations of 1,000 is adequate, or you want to go to
I would
0?
go to 0 if
All right.
we are providing a substantial amount of
Through the county in some fashion, being at school, but still the
in
county.
kind. I mean, that's real
All right, so
money.
we'll adjust that. If you put that in the Board of Supervisors column, but we're going to deduct 1,000 or
Check
0
it
out. Before we go to the summary, or would you like to revisit any? Those are our revisions or my revisions. I want to make sure we're reflecting your thoughts and wishes, and And again, we can go into any individual budget if you want to see anything specific, but I just want to make sure we're taking in your reflection or any thoughts on the additional revisions. Certainly we have between now and the 9th, we're going to come back. I've got to have some type of what I would call a final draft for you all, because we're going to have to send over to the paper, close of business on the 10th, unless we can get a grace period on that, because we got to advertise for that following week paper, which our public hearing will be scheduled for March 28th. So between the day and the 9th, we'll put out for the the public hearing. What I would encourage is you still have that March 16th scheduled date for a work session if you need it, but you don't want to increase what is advertised. So you, at least if you're coming down, that's great, but you do have that additional work session scheduled if we need to come down. But that would be after, or that advertisement went out. So any questions on any additional revisions before we kind of go to you can see what adjustments I've made. You want to bring that tab up, please?
Do you have any comments on this one?
Yes. So there's the adjustments of $324,345 that were adjusted based on what you've seen from previous requests.
And so on this tab, you're going to also see the COLA, 7% COLA impact with fringe was about $609,000. Jonathan, as he mentioned, adjusted down. And this brings you to the increase in dollar change from the previous version, which is primarily, obviously, the COLA. So right now, where we are is right at $2 million on the operating side. That does. So that is what would need to, come from fund balance or tax raise is the $2 million.
Go to, I think what we talked about is,
Can you go out of the schools?
Can you go to version 3?
Yeah.
Which one? Departments.
So on version 3, so basically that 600 and some, excuse me, Kim's got to do the minutes, so I better speak to the microphone. So the 843,260, that's 600 and some $1,000 is in that, and 600 and some thousand of that 843 represents your COLA, your fringes, and all, with zero health insurance, but all the fringes and stuff that go. So 843 currently right now is the county's new monies request. That's outside agencies and departments and the like. Correct? Well, departments.
Before CIP.
Before CIP and before including the schools. The schools was in that summary tab. If Jennifer, if you'll go back to that. Right. But overall, the tally with the schools, you're at that level. So even if you took the 900K of new revenues, you still got $1 million to try to get rid of, I guess is the appropriate term, I would say. And our plan, whatever that number is, would be an open appropriation from fund balance, not a tax increase.
All right, comments, questions, thoughts? Let's go to CIP.
Okay. I'm gonna bring that up as well. You have that, that's in the folder. Is that in the county? Okay. All right, let me, 1 second. So we have a summary level prepared, but I believe I emailed the board, I don't know if it was last Saturday for last, whatever I was working on. There was a facilities tab. So remember at the beginning of all this, I've sent you a CIP tab, and I quickly learned there are things we need to move, like mop sinks and fire extinguishers and all that. So we've gone back through and analyzed and removed things that needed to be removed, shift things that we feel that need to be in prior years, or adjust adequate pricing, if you will, because in this report, they do recognize 3% inflation year over year. So we will have to look at each number for the subsequent, like FY25 and so forth. So it's a 5-year plan, but just focusing on FY24 right now, if you will. Going through the capital on the county side, I'm going to go through the itemizing, not up top where it's got the 3.2 million, but I want to start below that in the CARP. So Jennifer, you'll highlight that starting at the $30,000. Yeah, we may need to adjust those lights too. Oh, I'm with you. And I'm right up here close to it. All right, so $30,000, and what this does, it takes everything that was roofing related out of that facility study, or everything that was structural, or everything that was HVAC, or what have you, and it totalized that. So I want to be specific on that. So 30,000 on roofing. If I remember correctly, that is for the actual, not a new roof, but painting of the roof at the courthouse. We deferred that last year, and I believe that's in the notation column. That really needs to be done. Painting as well as maintenance as anything else. The structural replacement was at 166,345. Then you go down to HVAC, 75,920. 40-some thousand of that is for the HVAC systems at the animal shelter. We had made the request for Riddleberger to come out to get us a quote. We haven't been able to have him on site yet. The board had asked, hey, if you got 6 or 7 units out there, can you get an HVAC contractor to come in and see if there's a more efficient way? Maybe it's 2 units that are staged properly, because that building is split up between animal control side, and then you have the runs for the dogs, the internal runs for the dogs, the staffing area, and then there's a cat, I'm just going to call it a cat area at the back. So we still have that request out. It's just, I apologize, we didn't have that available to see if we can do it more efficient. So we left that $40-some thousand number in. And that was looking at age of equipment and kind of the reports on the units that Riddleberger has serviced over the years. And the remaining, I know there's a unit that's, I think 1 or 2 units at CID, and the remainder is some units over at the Sheriff's Department. And I want to recognize Lindsay. We appreciate, she actually helped me update the Clore House was showing the units older, which were not correct. There was some CARES money that updated their equipment. So we reflected that in the CIP and made the adjustment. Paving and resurfacing, those are just smaller amounts of things that need to be done. So whether it's patching or restriping, it's not this massive. You can see later on, like in FY27, those would reflect some type of milling and paving or even some overlays in other areas. But for FY24, it was $1,755. The biggest cost is the EMS station renovation. I covered that with the board on Tuesday. Option 1, which would be renovating the existing building, had about a $1.3 million price tag. I went through and made some adjustments and recommendations to the board, and we now have that down to $788. And excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I know that was before. I think there was a $17,000 adjustment the board said last night. So we will go back in and revise that. Currently, that sits at $788. And yes, ma'am.
So in the first column that says 270,000 here, just so you know what that column is, that is our projected rollover from FY23 to 24. So right now we have in the capital, bless you, 270,000 sitting there left for the EMS station. So for new monies, it's 518 to get to the 788. I just wanted to mention the green here. Pay attention to the green. This is new monies needed in FY24, and this column over here is rollover.
So clarify for me why we're not looking at column E instead of I.
So the way this is laid out, I should have mentioned that first. These columns here are related to the 5-year capital plan. Those are coming from that facility study.
Right.
Those numbers. We have a column here called FY24 not budgeted, things that we felt like, or Jonathan felt like going through that we did not need to budget for from this FY24 column. And then the FY24 capital funding needed or capital budget columns basically give you those items from that facility study up here that are being recommended to fund. So in other words, it was 1.274 in the facility study, including the EMS station and the outdoor recreational center. And if you take out 142,685 in adjustments that we've made, the recommendation in FY24 is $1.1 million. However, we have this 270,000 that's rolling over, so really it's 861,000 in this
Okay,
section.
so you're making us aware of
Correct.
what's in the study in column I.
Correct. So this is all a part of the study.
All right.
Thank you for that clarification. So there is some rollover funding. However, that's in fund balance. So that's where all this is. Most of it is living at. There is a portion of funds you've already or borrowed funds, if you will. I'll touch on in a moment. So the 788, we'll go back and deduct. I think it was 17,000 worth of board recommendations last night. So that number will come down by 17,000. The 212,000. There's the PER that was done for the Hoover Ridge Outdoor Recreation Center. Currently, the 212,000 request is to cover engineering, and that would be a county request. That would be new monies. And the engineering is where they actually do the official design and bid packet, so you can put that out to the street and really see what is your actual construction cost. So we put that in upon request. So all in all, as Jennifer mentioned, the proposed capital request from the county. Oh, and I didn't include, I meant to put the vehicles. Let me cover the vehicles and technology. 302,000 and 39 of that is carryover monies is for vehicles and equipment. The sheriff represents, so it's actually an even 151 either way. The sheriff's request is for 4 vehicles, 2 civilian, 2 deputies. That total is 151. And the other 151 of the 302, if you may recall, when Gavin was here, we talked about the shelter generator. So the larger scale shelter, God forbid we never need it. This, if we get this grant, the county is responsible for 30% of that, but we cover before we reimburse. So that would locate a generator. That's a turnkey price of a generator over at the high school for any large scale event that we hope we never have to use. So that represents the 302. So it's vehicles and equipment. Technology is $100,000. We have been trying for a while, and now that we've got the REC bill paid for the make ready work for the poles on Main Street, the fiber project can be deployed, and that brings fiber to several buildings within the county, to include, I don't remember if the fiber going to, I believe it is to Hoover Ridge Towers in this price. So we have POs in for this already. It's just carrying this project. So $100K for that. So that's 402 and additional. So the total CIP for the county of new is, I think it's about 1.5. The borrowed monies, this is what gets you to that 6.6 number. 3.3 of that you will move forward is for the radio project. So those funds are already there, but it will be in your CIP. So that makes your number get larger. The broadband, 2 things. Your ARPA spending plan that was approved October of 2021. That took all of your ARPA monies minus like $33,000 for the deputies. But also last year when you were applying for the VATI 2023 grant, the RDOF area that was dropped by Chantel but picked up to be pledged to be serviced by Firefly, your local match was $400,000. So if you take the $400,000, add back in the monies we need to put back into your ARPA for broadband, the 33 it was spent for sheriff deputies, that gives you 433. So it brings that new broadband effort, everything but that Wolftown Hood area, because that's still undetermined, to 2.973. And then estimated ERP implementations, that's phase 2, phase 3 for Tyler, is a little over 107,000. And then county reassessment, I want to be clear, you have monies parked away right now. I believe it's actually 400K that's assigned in our fund balance. We're saying that of the 450,000 we anticipate that assessment costing the county, you need 300,000 in this fiscal year, and then the following year you will need that additional 150 to finish out your reassessment plan. But 300,000 that will hit this year. That does not include the school's request. So the schools were just here. They had a request of 735,572.
You need to subtract the 20 from the structural.
Make a note of that, please. We'll subtract 20 from there, 735. Of that 735, what they didn't touch on, I want to make sure the public is aware of it. There's 240,000 for 2 buses. So while that 735 or minus the 20, whatever that number is, not all of that is just for their kind of building type of infrastructure. 240 of that number is for 2 buses. So with that being said, make sure I've got the right column. The FY24 proposed capital budget is at 8.9 million. Jennifer, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
New monies would be, from fund balance would be the $2.7 million would be what I would add to that. And that's last year, and that's because we're going to be rolling over about 6.3. New monies 2.7, and then the total capital fund will be right at 9 million with all the projects.
And we have, so the broadband and the radio, those are committed. Right now in our fund balance per our CAFR, unassigned is at 11.4 million. Again, I keep going back to this fund balance policy that anything, 14% you must have in your reserve of your overall operations. And then once you exceed that or exceed the 18%, you're supposed to, within 2 years, get that number back down. That doesn't mean we go on a spending spree. I just give that to you as assurance that while this is either a large of it is borrowed money, the 3.3 for radio, or the ARPA funding at about 2.5, you're dealing with almost 6 million of that amount is either ARPA or borrowed. So it is a lot of money. I do not make light of that, but between those funding sources and your unassigned fund balance, you can take on any type of funding efforts that you wish. This is your current request, both county and schools. And I'm happy to drill down in any level of detail you want. I did go back through that facility study. One of the things you asked me was about the scale at the transfer station. We do not need it. That was like an $80,000+ item. We do not need to replace that now. I talked to our contract. I actually got the contract, and they said within 5 years you should replace it. But right now they feel like they can still certify it and repair it. It's just over the years, not only the age, but the road salts and all that get applied and fall off vehicles or come off the scale. It just starts eating away. But that was one item I wanted to bring back that we researched, and we do not need to handle that this year.
Who has comments, thoughts, questions on that?
I just got one. I am not opposed at all. I think it's absolutely necessary to set money aside for the assessment that it's going to cost us. But the decision that this board made a while back to move it to 6 years, is this stashing this money away is based on a 6-year cycle?
This is covering so I believe the last reassessment was 2018. So this will get you in that cycle. We will have to start setting monies aside after this for what you're talking about, sir, that 5 or 6 year. We'll go back and look at that resolution. But this is for your upcoming, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but this is for your upcoming, because the last reassessment was 2018. So you're in 29. Yeah, you're due.
I thought
You didn't have any money set aside for this?
You did.
Yeah.
There's $400,000, correct me if I'm wrong, that was in our fund balance. you've got to add another 50 to that because Brian feels like, and we're going to put out an RFP probably in the spring, unless you tell me no,
Yeah.
because it's going to take time to get companies' entrance and then he vets it. So then you'll have work that'll start in FY24, the bulk of it, with some wrap up in FY25. That's why you only have 300 showing that will need to be expended this year. That's what we're trying to convey. That 300K was what expended. In FY25, you'll need that additional 150 to fully fund this reassessment.
So why don't we go 2.25? No, go ahead. What?
We have 400 set aside for it right now,
Right.
and that's from previous years setting money aside.
And your fund balance, yes, sir.
And we haven't used that,
Correct.
but we need an additional 300 for 2 years.
What?
What am I missing?
No, that's basically where I was headed. Yeah.
The
I thought we
column
had
you've
it.
got is FY projected rollover. Why is there not with the assessment side, the 400 that's already set aside?
Yeah, we'll have to grab Bobby's spreadsheet.
Right.
It's there. What I'm trying to convey here is that we expect you to expend 300,000 of that 450. So I feel strongly, and we'll have to get the information back to you. I apologize, I don't have it at my fingertips today. That you have 400,000 set aside, and that's come over the last 2 or 3 years at least that you've set money aside to get to that total. It's just Brian feels that number may actually be about 450 when you get to the RFP and get your bids in. This is just saying we expect you to expend $300,000 of that 450 in FY24. But we will go back and pull that information. I've got my audit now. If I can find it before we wrap up today, I'll tell you. But I've seen that form before from Bobby.
That's fine. Yeah.
Other questions, comments on this? I don't know. I think we make, I say we, you two have made dramatic progress on this budget. Last week we really didn't have much put together. I know you all have been running it. This is pretty tremendous. With some massive numbers. So there you go.
It's just that they stay massive next year and the next year. Jeez, Pete, man, where we going?
Yeah, the thing that's not on here that worries, shouldn't say worry, that causes panic, right? I'm sorry about that. That's concerning to me is, yes, there's ongoing costs, but what doesn't hit, for example, you keep hearing it from me, the radio maintenance after the first year, whenever we go live, that following year, it's $300,000 a year for 15 years. So
Thanks, Jonathan.
Did we put that in there?
I did put that here on row 43. That's the future, 300,000 a year.
And that starts with FY25.
I have it as FY25 beginning.
So in that outlook, and I know I didn't focus. Thank you for that, Jennifer. I didn't focus on the beyond years, but there's your radio maintenance. I mean, you're going to start seeing additional things that we are contractually obligated to through that contract through Motorola that we'll have to pay. At some point, it'd be good if we get some revenues, some cell companies on these towers. Hopefully they'll offset that, but those are real numbers. You can choose what you want to, not paint or pave or whatever, but that's a number that you're going to have to deal with contractually. Not this year, but that's coming.
All right, questions, comments, thoughts? Y'all want to process this and go through it the next week and then come back next Thursday and see where we're at again?
I would, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't know what's the most appropriate, but my concern is I have to get down to, based on our calendar, and we updated that in the packet, so you should have that in your OneDrive. And at the beginning of this packet, I think, we have to advertise in, I think it's in the paper that hits whatever that following week is. Is it the 16th? So we will have to have our final draft. What I can do is take this and just start plugging in all the numbers to get that advertised right here. But I don't know if the preference is just to, obviously I can't start an electronic meeting and email you all. We're not doing that. But somehow, whether it's 2-on-2s or what have you, I need to get to a final number. So we'll make those minor refinements that were discussed here today. The schools is the biggest. So certainly there's some time. If you want to say today you like Supervisor Yao's sheet, work off of that. That's going to be the big one that helps us dwindle down the numbers.
Well, I took a draconian approach to that sheet, obviously, but I was certainly expecting after they needed that Friday evening before the Thursday's paper.
If we run the numbers, we can get that number, plug in everything today, come back on the 9th, which is next Thursday. You've got, and we don't make drastic revisions to it, next Friday you can get it to them so they can advertise the product next week.
Yeah, next Friday the
All right,
10th.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the play is.
Or am I missing something on it?
Draconian approach is where we're at. Their total new monies from the schools, not including the capital side, taking the 20 away, you're at 84.
Right.
You're at 84,842 of new money. Is everybody okay with where that's sitting right now? And do we want Jonathan and Ms. Warren to plug those numbers in and have a final for review budget ready for us next Thursday? And then if we have some slight revisions, I assume they're going to be slight, they may be drastic. And if they are drastic, we need to get in touch with Jonathan before the 9th next week. Let's go from there. Is that what we want to do? Okay. And play with the capital numbers that are advertised that are presented to us as is. Understanding that there is going to be some type of beginning appropriation to balance the budget.
From the fund balance.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I'd like to summarize to make sure I got the notes. So going with the number we presented on the county side, is what I think.
On the county side, we're going to plug in, I guess on the school side, what is that what you're going to get? You all going to kind of individually, or is there a certain number you want me to plug in now, or
Yeah.
you're going to revisit that again on the 9th, or?
Plug in that number.
Is
that where we're at?
that was with CIP? Is that what I understand? That total is CIP in operational. Okay.
Covers the operational side.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, Clay and I were there Saturday, and I gave a lot of that same spiel
Yes,
to them.
but then you're going to
at the end
redo.
of the thing, and I certainly expected them to come back here with adjustments.
And this is Anna Graham's comment is exactly right. They've gone through multiple levels. This is not their first round. Just need to convince some of those numbers. And that's all it is. I mean, basically pulling back from some of the COVID spending and kind of realigning the health insurance side. I'm sorry to pick on the PR person or whatever that guy's title is, but they can cover a lot more of that health insurance number if they can prioritize these things. That's all we're really saying. The SSO deal as well. We pulled that portion out. They're getting the SROs to go in there. What do we miss with it?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to see what they're spending their money on personnel wise.
I pulled their payroll the first year I was on the board, and it's very transparent. You can go through it real easily. At that time, they emailed the whole staff saying someone exploited it. So, and then I assume they don't do that anymore because that seems crazy. But That's what it is. Review, if you've got some big adjustments, talk to Jonathan so we can at least have a scenario plugged in that we can talk about on the night.
Okay.
Does that work?
Mr. Jewett, if I may be, so I'm going to take the questions I heard from the board, questions for the school board. I just want to make sure I understand. I think I understood clearly as far as the school information you were talking about, because right now it's an aggregate. How do you tell what's a principal from superintendent, assistant superintendent, director of student services, director of, okay, you want that itemized?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because I know when we look through this, that is aggregated. So I just want to make sure I understood. Okay. We will get that information.
All right. Other comments, thoughts?
No, nothing other than, so in the meeting today, I can't think of any major changes to what we'll see next week, right?
It looks like there's a handful of minor
Yeah.
adjustments that Ms. Warren and Jonathan have both identified, and there's some questions about, and it seems like more just questions on y'all's side, frankly, on no offense in any way. To come back, it would be a little bit more home. I mean, we asked last week, 7 days ago, or I didn't think we'd get to this point.
Oh, no,
at all.
me either.
I mean, good Lord, folks. Your free time. Let's see where we go. Let them hone it for another week. I'm sure it'll be pretty good.
Mr. Chairman, I think between now and next week, I'll have a chance to scrub one more time. It's been, just trying to get to this point, it's been a lot, but I do believe there's things here and there that will adjust slightly down. So
Yeah, like Board of Supervisors raises.
correct. I will make sure that gets adjusted.
Number one in my heart.
That is,
All right. Anything else on this? All right. Let's go to public comment. Yes, ma'am.
Eleanor Montgomery, thank you for your hard work that all of you have done. I mean, it boggles my mind. Hardy, you almost gave me a heart attack when you said a 10% tax increase was possible.
10 cents,
10 cents. What did I say?
14.7%.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, ooh. Thank you for what you did for that. I do have a question. Why aren't the county employees and the school employees, why don't they have the same health plan? Why aren't they together? I don't understand that.
We pool together, Ms. Montgomery, in the same insurance pool. What they were honing in on was the contribution share is different. For years, I'm speaking for myself, not the board, but obviously I sat up there. That's the best seat you got, by the way. But for years, there was a little bit difference in what the school's contribution was that they picked up versus the employee had to pay versus the county. Now we've got a different shift. So the county is slightly ahead last year. And it gets back to the chairman's point. There's been, I think within the last 3 or 4 years, they had years of service increases where we were in 2 rounds of 5% COLA increases. And then there's the 7% this year. A lot of that is because the state's saying do this. And you've got to take an across the board approach. It's easy to say, well, we're going to give to the constitutional officers and no other. If you're county funded deputy or county funded treasurer or whatever, you're not getting it. And it's put those increases. But as far as the insurance, to your question, we are pooled together to get a better rate. They're talking about, hey, we want to get our employees share what they pay for their family plan or their employee plus one, equivalent to what county employees pay for their family plan, employee plus one. Last year, in addition to the 5% COLA, the board either, I can't remember if it was the employee and the employee plus one, the family plan, they picked up additional increments of cost for the employees. That's what the school board's talking about. Of course, we have 100 employees. They have a 300 and whatever that number is of employees, but we are pooled together. And it's based on your, I don't know if it's a 2 or 3 year, but they definitely look at your past history that drives that up. According to them, I think they're going to go up regardless, but they look at your health claims.
We did see, what was it 3 years ago now? We saw a 30% increase, which was just, and I'm pretty sure we didn't pass any of that one.
Yeah,
I think we stuck.
You absorbed it all. Mm-hmm.
Health insurance public comment?
No,
You gotta hit the switch, Chris.
no.
How about there?
Hey,
I'll tell you, I'm a real whiz with technology. So, Chris Artelli, I'm here to speak about one particular item in the capital improvement budget, and that's regarding the outdoor recreation center. The Parks and Recreation Board has asked for that funding of $212,000 to support Hoover Ridge. Committee has also been looking at that. What that number represents is the engineering and permitting for the Hoover Ridge Outdoor Recreation Center. And why that's important now is we have a pre-engineering report. We're looking at a $3+ million project. We're looking at significant funding options from grants and donors. But the reality, if I can take a minute or two to walk you through the process, if somebody came along tomorrow and said, here's $2 million, get started. Well, we can't get a bulldozer out there. We can't put a shovel in the dirt until we've done all the engineering and the permitting. So we can't run any water lines or electric lines or put a road in or a parking lot or anything until all of that engineering has been done and it's been submitted to DEQ and other regulatory agencies and then approved and then permits issued. And our engineer tells us minimum 12 to 18 months for that process. Based on the way things have been the last couple of years, I would say probably 18 months. I don't see it happening. In 12 months, if we had the funding and we started today, just all of this is taking a lot longer than it. Everybody's engineering firms are busy, site work contractors are busy, everybody has got all plates full and can't get help. If we could get the funding secured to start the engineering services and permitting part of the process, we could start that clock ticking now. In the meantime, concurrently, we're working on our grants, we're working on fundraising. And if we get to the point where 12, 18 months from now, we have some significant money to work with, we may also be at the point where we have the ability to start putting it to work and not looking at a donor today that may want to give us some significant funds and say, well, that's great, that's wonderful. Can you just hang on to that for a couple of years? Sometimes that's not an option. They want to see that. They want to make that contribution. Their heart is in the right place. They want to help the county. They also want to see something happening, not that it's just being tucked away. So you all have an impossible task, and I'm humbled sitting here listening to all the debate and discussion, and I'm appreciative that each one of you bring your time and your talent and your energy to serve the county like this. And I know we have tremendous needs, and the needs have to get met. And an outdoor recreation center isn't a need in a way. I think it's a need because we need these kinds of activities in the county for our youth, for our adults, and it's good for your mental health. It's good to have all these facilities to get people outdoors. In any event, that's why we're here. That's why that number's in the budget. If there's any questions that I can help answer, I'll do that. But thank you all for what you do, and thank you for considering that. Did I leave anything out that you guys want to address? Okay. Good.
Now go to that one. We gotta do the minute thing. Five most complicated microphones. I mean, we're seeing that this chair.
They're sent to their budget.
There you
request. She gets it all.
We're gonna be down to 10 cans of string.
I know, you have to turn the volume up on it though.
that's
All
it.
right, so to follow what Chris said, thank you all for all of the work you guys put into this. You do have an impossible task. I'm with Madison Parks and Rec, but I'm also here as a parent of a child who's in the school system. A child who plays in rec sports, and we live in this community, we've lived here for a long time. Looking at some of the cuts that you are looking at making, especially with the schools, I just want you to remember that there are little people who do still matter. Cutting the after school program while the ESSER funds are leaving. Just seeing those kids after school being able to learn how to sew, learn how to sing. There's a Waverly Singers that my daughter's a part of. They have all of these different activities now that are after school that they otherwise would not have had. Boys and Girls Club, it's an amazing, amazing asset to our community. It gives kids after school care. While they have a lot of funding that comes outside of the Board of Supervisors, obviously, being able to invest back into the youth is extremely important because otherwise, we're running into issues with crime and kids being bored and getting into things they shouldn't be getting into. We don't have after school programming, after school things for kids to do, like at the park, programs at the park, good childcare with the $30,000 that the Learning Center asked for that's not going to be given. I mean, granted, I see you guys not thinking that's a part of your responsibility, but it is our community still. And the kids matter and what they do in our community matters. So I do want you to consider some of these options, if not a recreation center, putting back into the little people and giving them stuff to do here instead of going out of the county and finding other bad ways to get into trouble. So.
Other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure that most of you have heard by now, but I felt that I
Have you ever-
mentioned the passing of Edward DeJarnett Berry, the judge. So if you keep his family in your thoughts, Ed's a great guy and a true Southern gentleman, and I just thought that we should mention him tonight.
Other public comment? Is anybody watching us online? Yeah, we're consistent. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Regardless of what we end up doing with the outdoor recreation center, if you fund that $212,000 or not, it'd be great if you could, but understand where everything is at the economy now. We would still like to have something written from the county to give us a go-ahead to start fundraising. A lot of the grants that we would have to apply for, we would have to have the okay from the county. Written grants, yes. So that's something that I'd like you to consider as well.
So let me ask, so what's in place right now is an MOU between PRA and the county that gives you the right to manage the property. And then the CIP, if they pass the CIP that has the 212 in, those are not mechanisms you can use. You're saying you need
Yes, we could use that.
does the CIP, I'm happy to do whatever. Does the CIP approval do that or?
Talking to Jonathan the other day, the question was either the MOU that's outstanding or the 212 does it. And chances are what we need to do is do some type of MOU pertaining to the outside rec facility to allow them to proceed. But I think the direction that we've got to go on that is we should ask Sean Gregg his advice, and then with that, there should be some type of endorsement, whether the 212 or the existing MOU. We should be able to issue some type of addendum that would identify and say, yeah, you can go ahead and do it if the board wants to move down that path. But we'll get it to Sean Gregg and then we can go from there.
Mr. Chairman, page 29 of your audit in the assigned column for the 2025 assessment. Now, I know that hits FY 24, it was $400,000. So again, we need to take it from assigned, put it in your capital, and we're saying 300 to be expended. But page 29 is where I found that data.
One more thing too, where is when you ask us to put up something for equipment we need?
Oh, thank you. Glad you asked that. I do not have that in here. So I will say, well, now's your good time to speak to it. So if we do not fund that, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, we have, I've been doing Clay makes fun of being an ex-dairy farmer all the time.
You should be resourceful.
We have been very resourceful. We've taken all the county's old vehicles and used them, and that's fine. It's great. I have no complaints about that. And we have bought a lot of used equipment, a lot over the years. And we're starting to catch up with some stuff. And we're in a couple of different things that we need is like another zero turn and the drag machine. We John Deere 3-wheel drag. We take care of we take care of all the athletic facilities in the county.
I'm gonna send this
Schools
to
too.
you. Let me
And
email
we
you
have like
this.
10
If you can bring
baseball,
this up,
softball
please.
infields that we take care of, line and drag for each game, all the games.
You have it?
And we also mow, close to 100 acres of property of all the stuff we have. So let's give it consideration.
So that, I apologize, that was a miss on my part to put that into this draft.
No, that was me. I didn't put that in there.
So let's bring it. Can you bring it up on the screen, please? The capital improvements that Mr. Carper is talking about for FY24, in addition to the 212, is a 72-inch zero turn at 17,300, a new field rake for the John Deere of 19,000, and a 7x12 utility trailer for 3,000. I did not put those in there, but that is an additional request by PRA.
So Jerry, what does Parks and Rec get from the schools in return for lining all their fields and mowing and $5,000 a year?
It's in our books for 8. Yeah, so the schools, all things included, are 8. All right, I'm gonna say exactly what I'm saying. We're putting 212 into this facility. I think some of this stuff needs to be postponed. I'm sorry. That's just what it is. You see the schools, what going and done to them. The only mechanism that I'm kind of pondering, we do it with sheriff's cars pretty often, is would a lawnmower be something that we could do at the end of the fiscal year pertaining to surplus funds? I guess that's not the right way to say it.
It's if we're budget favorable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For this fiscal year.
I mean, that's the only mechanism. I mean, looking down this list, I mean, what are we at? Tell you, 6 million, almost $7 million.
What?
If we can, if we've got carryover funding, I think that's a place we could go ahead and purchase a lawnmower or something. We've done that before. I think we did it with Roger, maybe on lawnmowers for us. But adding it in and looking at it terribly at all.
I would recommend, because I'm eyeballing some things for the sheriff's office, like the berm reconstruction or indoor minor modification and some other things like that. I normally would look in the budget around like May to do some forecasting, late May, maybe early June. So if it's appropriate to the board, I will take those list of items and I can bring to you, hey, there's some funding areas that you could utilize to purchase and not have an FY24 impact if that's the pleasure of the board.
I think that's the play here. I think that's the play. You'll talk to Jerry.
I'll talk to Jerry. I guess I would ask is, I mean, certainly if I ask you, hey, what do you need? You're going to tell me all three, and that's fine. But if there's something that would, if I, would it, okay.
You have done very well.
Okay.
You had some excess tires that you make a drag out of. I'm sure you're familiar with that being very fun.
I've got to drag it home and trying to get rid of. I'll give to you.
Look,
We burnt those while we were slave riding.
Yeah, if I don't use it, I need to get rid of it. It's a mosquito. You don't need to.
6 years ago, it was pretty bad shape.
Are we not retiring any vehicles that we can pass on to Parks and Rec? this
We
year?
did.
We've done
They,
really well.
they've got that Ghostbusters van we gave them.
Looking for what?
It is pretty cool though. I like it. You got a Tahoe. I'm in a Ford Fusion. You're okay. I let that come out wrong. That was building, wasn't it? It seemed, no, seriously, we will look at end of the year and see if there's some favorabilities. I'll keep all three in mind, but definitely you helping me know that if I have to prioritize, at least we can find some funding and I'll bring it back to the board.
I think that's where we're at, folks. Anybody else have any more public comment? Does the board have any more comments? Thank you to Jonathan, Jennifer, and everybody else that worked on this. I mean, just tremendous. What do y'all want to do?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you all.
I gotta go.
Is no longer being recorded.